What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for October 17th, 2024. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Thursday edition of the podcast. Let's start with a little bit of housekeeping. Be sure to follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mont on Twitter and TikTok, at Philly Jimbo on Instagram. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mont, and spread the word. Like I keep saying, if you're listening to this and enjoying it, likely somebody else will too. So spread the word, and let's continue to grow this thing. Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame induction ceremony is coming up November 7th. All the information you need is in the description. Looking forward to a huge class this year, working on a couple different projects for them. After we do our Sixers preview sometime next week, we will start previewing the inductees for this class. It is not going to be long now, so go check that out. There's still tickets available, but all the information you need is right there in the description. Let's start with a recap of yesterday's question of the day. I asked you, should the Phillies have extended Rob Thompson? 42% of you said no. The rest were split between yes, and then there was a lot of people saying it doesn't matter who the manager is, they need players, whether it's a closer, outfielder, you name it. Everybody ran the gamut with what the Phillies needed. But 42% of you don't think that Rob Thompson should have been extended. Another like 38 was no, yes, they should have, and then the rest were doesn't matter. We need players, which I kind of am in that camp. I don't really think it matters who manages this team if the guys are not going to do what they need to do. And I keep saying they need some guys that put the ball in play. Somebody like a Gene Segura or somebody like that that's going to put the ball in play, make contact, and not just swing at the first pitch like he's hitting the tee box on the ninth green or the ninth tee. All right, so for the Phillies, now that we finished up our Red October special yesterday, we're really going to kind of put the Phillies on ice for now. There's not going to be a lot of talk until after the World Series when the hot stove starts heating up. And it's a shame because I expected to be talking about this team for another couple weeks. Looks like the Mets and Dodgers. It depends on what happens, I guess, in Game 4. I should look before I even say that, but it looked before I went to bed as if the Dodgers were going to win and easily take the lead. It's one of those things. I don't really care. Yeah, 8-0. I don't really care. It goes back to when the Eagles were losing in the NFC Championship game and just how turned off I was to the Super Bowl. And that's how I am right now with these playoffs. I couldn't care less about what happens. It's just frustrating, and especially when you're watching and you're seeing teams do what you wanted the Phillies to do. Nobody wants to see that. It's kind of like, everybody does mourn their own way. Mine, I don't care. But no, for the most part, unless something comes up, no Phillies talk now. We had a nice little run where we were talking about all four teams there for a while, but we will put the Phillies on ice unless something comes up. No need in rehashing what happened with them. Be sure to check out my boys over at the Clashing Conferences podcast. New football episode dropped today. Thursday is typically my paperwork day, so I will have that on in the background as I'm getting caught up on some paperwork this morning. Looking forward to that. And then the baseball one will drop tomorrow. Again, I will listen, but not really looking forward to hearing what Mike has to say. But that's all part of being a fan. But go to Clashing Conferences podcast. They have you covered wherever you get your podcasts as well as on YouTube. And then go do some shopping at Philly Goat. Went to Rally House yesterday to get some long sleeve tees for my son, and I still am seeing Philly Goat stuff in Rally House, which is pretty cool. So be like the cool kids. Get your Eagles gear. Maybe if we start believing the Eagles will do well and start buying the Eagles stuff, maybe they'll turn it around. Flyers are underway. Sixers kick off next week. So lots of good things happening in Philly sports. So go to Philly Goat. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off of your order. I'm actually wearing jeans today for the first time in a while. and I have the Schmitties on. They go with everything. So go check out those canvas loafers too. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off your order. All right, Eagles injury news. Does look like Mailata, well, we knew Mailata, he said it himself, he's going to miss a couple games. It's looking about the same for Dallas Goedert, who didn't practice with the very similar injury. And I don't know what's up with these hamstring injuries. If you remember, we went through this a few years back with the Eagles where they were getting all these soft tissue injuries. I don't know if it's because they are, which doesn't bode well for the old school people who are like, practice more, hit in practice. But they're getting all these soft tissue injuries, and I don't know if it's something with the training staff or what's going on there. So those are two big losses for the Eagles heading into this big rivalry game. Slay looks like he's day-to-day, but last I had read, he's trending to play, which is good. Big injury news for the Giants. Andrew Thomas is out. He had Liz Frank surgery, so he's out for the season. Huge loss for them. And this game, I don't know, because it's a rivalry game. It's the Giants, and the Eagles could blow them out. The Eagles could get blown out. I just don't know. But Andrew Thomas not being in is a huge loss for the Giants. As we get into Friday, we'll start looking at the game and breaking it down. This line, it's a 3. The line scares me. The line, I would have expected it to be lower. I feel like the odds makers have been overrating the Eagles, but we'll see. We don't know. Jalen yesterday was asked about why he's not using the middle of the field. He chalked it up to game flow. I don't know. I'm getting tired of just ripping Jalen, but as somebody who my seats are high enough at the Eagles game, middle of the field is kind of open. And you saw what happens when they do throw some crossing routes to the middle of the field. So I don't know if that's going to be something that they intentionally try to work on with the scripted plays, but I do know they need to get off to a fast start. So we'll have more on the Eagles as it gets done, or as it gets closer to the game. Flyers in Seattle tonight. Last game of their West Coast trip. Not a bad start for having to go out west to start the season. They're 1-1-1 with 3 points, and have played fairly well. Mishkov got his first 2 goals the other night. I know I'm looking forward to Saturday night and actually being able to watch this team live for the first time. So hopefully they can pull out a win, have a successful opening road trip out west, which is always a tough swing. It's like the equivalent of the Phillies opening the season with the Giants, the Dodgers, Mariners, and Diamondbacks, or A's if you want to go there. So always tough to open on the road, but looking forward to them being back on Saturday. Sixers won last night against the Nets, shorthanded. KJ Martin, Kelly Oubre played well. A little bit of a scare with Tyrese, who fell hard to the floor but was able to get back up. Jarrett McCain did leave the game with a concussion. He's being evaluated for that. And thankfully, they finish up the preseason tomorrow against the Magic, and they'll open the season with who knows who's going to be there to open the season. But our old pal Doc is coming back next week, so we're looking forward to that. All right, since we finished the Red October, we got a little bit of time here, a couple days. We're going to preview, break down the Sixers season, and look ahead to what they have. And today we're going to start with just kind of a recap of the offseason because there was a lot of moves. Daryl Morey was busy, but we know last year they started off so hot. They were 24-13. They were in the 2 seed. They were right there with the Celtics. Then the devastating injury to Joe when he tore his MCL. Tyrese was an all-star. And then he just kind of fell apart without Joe because they did not have the depth. So play-in tournament, they got the 7th seed, and then they had that series against the Knicks where Joe just was not himself, and they had some it was an exciting series that they probably should have won more than 2 games, but that's kind of what we're going into this season with that taste in our mouth. And throughout the offseason, the big question was how are they going to spend that money? Started off with the drafted Jarrett McCain, which I really do like him. I think he's going to be a good piece. I don't know if he's going to be a bona fide starter, but he seems to be that guy that can come off the bench and give you a spark if you need it. And then Adem Bona, who is a high-energy dude. I really, really like him. I don't know how many minutes he's going to get this year. We'll get more into that when we break down the bench. But I like both of the draft picks, and that is something that, truthfully, the Sixers have struggled with other than Tyrese since Joe has been here, is drafting. And so I think this is a solid draft for them. Then the big signing, obviously, was Paul George. Then they went out and got Caleb Martin. They extended Tyrese. Good for him. I think that's a good move because the way it's set up, and I talked about this when it happened, you sort of now have that overlap where hopefully maybe you have an off year or two, but it should not necessarily be devastating when Joe finally does retire. Re-sign Kelly Oubre, who I love. Like, I know a lot of people are down on Oubre, but I like him. He just has that, and I don't even know what it is, but like he's a Philly guy, and he just has that grit that I feel like he's one of us. It's one of those things. People are like, well, what's a Philly guy? And to describe it, I can't describe it, but he's one of us. Brian Dawkins, he was one of us. Like, it's just that he brings it. Jason Kelsey, one of us. And as much as I loved him, Donovan McNabb, not one of us. So you kind of see where I'm going with that. And I think I just jotted it down. I think that would be a good special when we get into the winter, breaking down the ultimate Philly guys in Philly sports. But I like the signing of Oubre. Love that they brought back Robert Drummond, who never wanted to leave in the first place. And I think he brings just a different attitude. I know he's been working on three-pointers as well, but he can come in and grind out some minutes as when Joe is out and provide you with some minutes when Joe has to sit out. Eric Gordon, I like that signing. Kyle Lowry coming back. I know he's old, but he brings some leadership, knows Nick Nurse's system, won a title with him. So I think that was a good piece to come back. And then the surprise signing after his performance in the Olympics, Gershon Yabusele. I really think that given a second chance here, he's going to be able to do something. Again, this is one of those moves that they haven't had, and we saw that last year when Joe went down. They did not have the depth, and I think if anything, this team is deeper than what we've seen in a long time for the Sixers. And then the final move was extending Joe, ensuring that he's going to finish out his career here. But I would have to say this was a great offseason by Daryl Morey. He made the right moves. He made the moves he had to make, put the pieces in place. And now, as with the Phillies, as with the Eagles, basically all our teams, it's up to the players now to perform. Nick Nurse has to push the right buttons to get that rotation down. But like I said, I like the offseason, and that leads to today's question of the day. And is this the best team the Sixers have had since Joel Embiid's been here? And I think they've had better players. So that team with Jimmy Butler, yes, that was probably a better starting five than what we have now. But top to bottom, I think this is the best team that the Sixers have had. But what do you think? Is this the best team, top to bottom, that Joe has had around him since he's been here? 267-495-8531. That'll get you in. Talk about the offseason, whatever you want. Anything Philly sports is fair game. Actually, anything life is fair game on the Back to the Future voice and text line. Let's go. Let's get that thing rolling. But what do you think? I think it's the deepest team or best team he's had. But what do you say? 267-495-8531. That's the Back to the Future voice and text line. And then the rest of the week schedules, we're going to take a look at the starters, the bench, some of the cohesion, and just the as the Phillies used to say with Garrett Stubbs, the vibes of the team. Obviously, we can't talk about a Sixers preview without talking about their health. And then we'll end it Tuesday with our prediction for the season leading into Wednesday's game against the Bucks. But is this the best team that Joe's had since he's been here? 267-495-8531. That'll get you in. Anything Philly sports related is fair game. All right, today we are going to go back to 1954. And on this day in 1954, the Eagles beat Washington 49-21 to move to 4-0 on the season. Quarterback Adrian Burk threw for 242 yards and 7 touchdowns. Yes, 7 touchdowns. That 7 touchdowns tied Sid Luckman's NFL record for touchdowns in a game. Burk became only the second player in NFL history to throw for 7 touchdowns in a game. He did so on 19 for 27 passing. He did throw an interception. He threw 3 to Pete Pios and 3 to Bobby Walton. The other one, it went to, and I had to put this in here because this is one of the greatest names I've ever heard in my life. Toy Ledbetter caught the 7th touchdown, or the other touchdown pass for Adrian Burk that day. Yes, Toy Ledbetter. Remember him? Burk is only one of 8 quarterbacks ever to throw for 7 touchdowns in a single NFL game, including Nick Foles, who did it in 2013. The Eagles are the only team to have 2 guys in their history throw for 7 touchdowns in a game. That 1954 Eagles team ended up 7-4-1, finished in second place, a game and a half behind the Browns. Burk, though, played for the Eagles from 51 through 56. He was a 2-time Pro Bowler. Obviously, that year he led the league in touchdown passes in 1954. He also led the league in punting twice. So the guys were just made different back then. However, probably don't know much about Adrian Burk because he only threw for 61 touchdown passes in his NFL career. So 11 and a half of his touchdowns came on this day in 1954. Let that sort of sink in for you. Dude threw 7 touchdowns in a game today, or on this day, but only 61 for his career. Not good. I think he had a high 40 completion percentage. It was a different NFL back then, so throwing 7 touchdown passes in a game is a big deal for him. But the highlight of Adrian Burke's career came on this day back in 1954. 7 touchdown passes as the Eagles beat Washington 49-21. Good old Toy Ledbetter got in on the act too, catching a touchdown pass for the Eagles. All right, be sure to let me know your thoughts on this Sixers team. Is this the best team that Joe has had around him since he's been here? I say yes, and it's not even close. Yes, there's been a better starting 5, but I think top to bottom, this is the best team that Joe has. We'll have more on the Sixers over the next few days as we get ready for the start of the 24-25 season. Wednesday night down at the Center against our old pal, Doc Rivers. Hopefully we give him a nice little warm reception. And hopefully this is one of those scheduled losses for Doc's team. You know how big he is on the scheduled losses. We will go into more on the Eagles-Giants. It is a rivalry week, so I might touch on some of the rivalry games between the Eagles and Giants. You know that they are my most hated Eagles rival. I feel like I am in the minority on this one, and it's fine. It's the hill I'm choosing to die on. I hate the Giants more than I hate the Cowboys. And truthfully, because it was when I was growing up, it was the Giants and Washington who were the 2 great teams in the NFC East. The Cowboys sucked when I first started watching football, and it wasn't until I was a little bit older when Jerry Jones bought the team and Jimmy Johnson came in as coach that they got better. So growing up, the Cowboys were like, I always use this analogy because they cost me money on Saturday, but Rutgers, who is now in the Big Ten, there was a point in time where that was the only game that Temple had a shot to win, and usually they beat Rutgers. So for me, the Eagles always beat the Cowboys. It just wasn't fun. The games were always better against the Giants. So that is why the Giants are my most hated Eagles rival. Hopefully the Flyers come back home with a winning road trip to start the season, and then we hit the ground running Saturday down at the Wells Fargo Center. Be sure to call or text me on the Back to the Future voice and text line, anything Philly sports related, but answer the question of the day. Is this the best team that Joe's had around him since he's been here? Be sure to check out my buddies over the Clashing Conferences. Go to Philly Goat, all that other good stuff. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for October 17th, 2024. My name is Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Thursday. Look up Toy Ledbetter because one of the greatest names I've ever heard in Philly sports history. Toy Ledbetter scored a touchdown, one of the 7 thrown by Adrian Burk on this day. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.